Hello and welcome to another edition of The Nation Jendela with me, Eleno Abdullah. Now, Jendela is the government's infrastructure plan to improve the country's digital communication under the 12th Malaysia Plan 2021 to 2025, now especially in rural areas. Due to its expansive network coverage, Celcom is in a good position to realise the government's plan in improving connectivity via the Jalinan Digital Negara initiative. So Celcom also recognises the increase in demand for data will only rise further in 2021, and the telco is looking to stay ahead in the next normal by upgrading network capacity to stay on the pulse. Now, the organisation has remained committed to drive multiple digitalisation initiatives as part of its main business focus, including its continuous pursuit towards empowering businesses, retail and home customers with innovative propositions on all levels to sustain the growth forward. So today, we have the privilege of speaking to the man himself, Chief Executive Officer of Celcom Axiata Berhad, Idham Nawawi, on the topic of Celcom's accelerated network investment. Hello and welcome to the studio, Idham. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. Very good to be here.
Pleasure to have you join us in the studio. Now let's go straight to the first question. We're talking about Jendela. It's a huge ambition as we face this pandemic, but it's also a necessary ambition for us to have. So Jendela is an expedited plan towards providing seamless and inclusive connectivity for all Malaysians. Does the industry as a whole see Jendela as a challenge? And if you may share the challenges that a telco like Celcom is facing towards achieving this aspiration?
Well, everybody knows about Jendela by now, I hope. It's the accelerated plan. Like you said, we want to expand a little bit of the network to reach the societies, the further outskirts of the society, improve the network quality, and bring more fibers to the home. So it's not just about the mobile network, but it's also about fiber optics network. Yes, Jendela is a challenge, but it's not a challenge that we're not unfamiliar with, or we are unfamiliar with. Something that we can overcome if we put our mind to it. We are now, one of the biggest challenges now is because we are reaching further out to the population. You know, as we go out further and further, the population becomes a lot more dispersed. As well as the terrains that we have to go through, that is becoming a little bit more challenging for us than typically doing in the city. So that's one of the biggest challenge. You can say, for example, if you want to go to the last 5% and the last 2% of the population, the cost to bring up the infrastructure could escalate as high as 6 to 8 times, if not 10 times, of what normally it will cost you typically in the city. So the proper resource planning, proper network planning, proper designing, and proper use of different types of technologies for different type of environment is important. So true, yes, it is a challenge, but it is a challenge that is, like you said, is a necessity, and we must do this because as a nation, as we have seen in the past 12 months with this pandemic, MCO, the criticality of having the right access, the right quality of access into every homes in Malaysia is a must. It's no longer a luxury.
Now, is it realistic to reach everyone where no one's left behind?
It is if we put our minds to it, but maybe not with the same technology. We probably doesn't make sense if you're trying to use same technology to every corner of the world or every corner of the country. The last 2% of the country possibly is better off to be connected via, example is the satellite technology. There has been advancement of satellite technology. There's such as high throughput satellite, so on and so forth, which we can then build a local smaller network to use the satellite as the backbone. Then yes, we can reach them.
So there are solutions available. It may not be the same technology, same rollout, same, not driving the same car, essentially.
Yes, exactly. So different purpose, you use different tools, right? So you can use different, as you reach more and more outskirts, then you use, for example, a little bit more technical here, is the lower band spectrum, because the reach is a lot wider than using a capacity spectrum. So those kind of things that we use. Even though sometimes I joke, if you want to reach the last 1% of the population, it's probably more economical to move them to the city because
migrate the people to the city.
So but it's not just that. That's just something, just a bit of humor. But we also have to look at in terms of their lifestyle, because some of these people or that live for example, in certain part of Sarawak and all that, they're quite nomadic as well.
Yeah.
So if you put a telecoms tower, it also doesn't serve the purpose because they may not be there a few months down the road.
Right.
So this kind of thing we have to take into account.
So there's multiple things to address, multiple challenges that, of course, telcos will face. Now, part of it also involves the plan to sunset the 3G.
Yes.
Now, part of the plan is to gradually get there. I mean, there was a timeline that we were heading towards, but of course, with everything accelerated by the pandemic, this has also been accelerated. So towards the end of this year, that's the plan for sunsetting 3G. What does this mean to consumers, and why does the industry need to do this?
Very good question, actually. This is something that, 3G has been around since, 2013, 2014, and we still have a lot number of users on that actually using the 3G devices.
Right.
The thing is, they may not realize that they are using a 3G device.
Exactly.
Because they're still doing the same thing that they were doing the same way since 10 years ago, right?
Now, this is, of course, a seamless transition that is also kudos to the telco industry, that you didn't realize that, you've been upgraded and you don't see the differences.
Exactly. So for Celcom, for example, we have been in this business, in this industry since the first generation, the ART 900 days. Then we have the second generation. Then we have third generation. Now we're in the fourth generation, which is the 4G LTE. So we have managed the progression of this, but we have not, as a country, we have not once yet shut down a real network. We may have done it for the first generation before, when we moved from analog to digital. Like I said, taking this network down takes a lot of planning.
Right.
There's a lot of implication. For Celcom, we have started doing this actually since about 2 years ago. We used to have about 2.7 million at the end of 2019. 2.7 million of 3G only devices that's on the network. Gradually, we had taken it down. By the end of 2020, we had about 1.7. No, I'm sorry. End of 2018, it was about 2.7 million, and 2019, about 1.7 million. At the end of 2020, we have only about 800,000.
That's a huge
3G
leap.
devices. So the low-hanging fruit of the 3G devices that we have able to reach, we have reached them. So this 800,000 is not just pure individuals behind them, because we also have machine-to-machine devices.
Industries that are being affected.
Industries that they're actually using the 3G network. For example, the meter reading for even some Tenaga Nasional, for your power meters and for your water meters, sometimes they use this 3G network to transmit back the data. So that's also something that we need to work on. And the challenge is they are everywhere around the country.
Now, Idham, we'll have to take a short breather right now. But when we come back, let's look at the industry as a whole and how it's going to affect consumers in terms of real-world engagement and real-world usage. We'll take a short breather. We'll be back right after these messages. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Hello and welcome back to The Nation Jendela with me, Jalinan Digital Negara. And in the studio, I'm speaking to, of course, the Chief Executive Officer of Celcom Axiata Berhad, Idham Nawawi. And we're speaking about Celcom's accelerated network investment. Now, Idham, before we went on the break, we spoke about the sunsetting of 3G. And we want to know how it's going to affect consumers at home. Perhaps you can advise us a little bit about that.
Okay, let me just take it back a little bit. There are two reasons why people are using 3G today. Okay, one is the network that they have in their area could be a bit more remote at that the only network available is the 3G network without any 4G network. So those kind of network, for example, Celcom still have around 200 of those sites that we need to upgrade to 4G. So we will do that. Okay, so that's the first reason why they're on the 3G. The second is the devices that they are on. It could be there are 4G signals in their area, but their device actually they have bought a while back, or they bought a second hands. That is actually just a 3G devices. So for what we will do is the moment we have upgraded the 4G, then we will inform our customers that their area 4G is available. And if the consumer, anyone that looks at their phone and still see 3G there, that means their device is still a 3G device. What they need to know is, come at the end of 2021, that device will stop working.
Right.
And this is not just if they're using Celcom, if they're using any network in Malaysia. So, so it's very important that they understand what device that they're using, and then we don't want like midnight by the 1st January, what happened, and they
suddenly
lose all connectivity, they lose all the communications.
Right.
So I think it's very important. Then they need to act now in terms of understanding what they are using and what can they do to continue the service.
So there is an education plan, awareness plan, a reach out plan in order to educate the consumers that are on this.
So we will undertake that. We'll take that together with MCMC, but we also need the help of the media to make sure this is being wawarkan and then used to actually to get to the segments that we want. We can help with our existing customers, but sometimes, you know, because you receive the SMS, not so many people act when they got the SMS, but sometimes when they know that the phone is not going to work, then only people will act on it. So what we will do is we also make sure that we have the right offer for our customers and with affordable devices.
To upgrade the
devices.
Right.
So when that happens, so we will come around. Sometimes they have to find the nearest shop, or sometimes we also use we have a roving blue cube that can go on into the villages and help them to upgrade, but most of them they have to find where is the nearest shop for them to do that. So I think that's what we'll do. Now, why are we doing this? I think it's important for everyone to understand also. Why is it that just suka-suka, we just want to shut down the network, just stop 3G, right? Let's focus on 4G and stop 3G. Not really. There's the reason behind it.
Right.
3G today is being used predominantly for voice because it's not very good for data, because 4G is much better experience on data. So a lot of our voice traffic, even if you use a 4G phone, when you call, actually it's using a 3G network.
I see.
So a lot of people don't know that.
Okay.
So what we need to do first is actually migrate those traffic to also the 4G devices using a 4G, they call it voice over LTE. So when you buy a new phone tomorrow, if you're already using a 4G devices, you may not be using a voice over LTE device. So when you buy your next 4G phone, make sure it's a voice over LTE capable, because then you have a much better experience in terms of voice. So when we shut down the 3G network, then the resources that we are being used for 3G now can be used for 4G. So we can have a higher capacity, we can have a wider coverage of 4G that actually you can benefit more, because today more than, I would say, 70% of the utilization of the network, 70 to 80% of the utilization of the network is not on data. So it's not economical, or it's not optimized, it's not optimum
to still keep 3G running. I mean, essentially, it's easy conversation to have if, like, you have two vehicles in your house and you're running one constantly and the other one is not running, but you're still maintaining it. There's still cost and overhead to maintain that vehicle when you're only using 70% of the time that vehicle. So time to migrate and repool our resources. Now, in a recent media announcement, Celcom shared that it's focused on accelerated network investment. Would you be able to share with us why Celcom is driven towards this move, and what does that entail? This network investment? Well,
every year, our guidance, we always spend about 900 to 1 billion ringgit in terms of capex investment. And majority of this is on network. Because some, of course, we spend on other IT equipment, systems, and all that, but majority is on the network. Then on top of this, we also spend another 1 billion plus ringgit on just operating and managing the network. That's on the operating side. So that's quite a big amount of money that we have to spend every year. We announced that we are upgrading about 4,700 sites earlier than expected, bringing it forward. About 250 million that would have been spent in the second quarter, we bring it forward into, actually we announced this in December itself, so we bring it forward. so that some of this benefit that we're trying to get, it can be realized earlier. So we can bring more capacity earlier, more coverage to the customers earlier. Reason being, of course, one of the main driver is the increase in data demand. I mentioned to you 50% increase, but what we are seeing even February to February, if December to December, is 50%. February to February, we're talking about close to 80% in terms of data increase. So that's why, hence, we have to bring forward some of this investment. So some of this investment include, for example, using a new spectrum, the L900, we call it, that typically before was being used for 2G and also 3G. And we're going to use it for 4G, so we can have a wider coverage, expand the coverage further. Today, Celcom has the widest network, the widest 4G network even. We are looking at today already about 93 to 94% of population coverage. Together with MCMC, in some for the remote areas, we hope to expand this to about 96 to 97% by the end of this year. And hopefully then by the end of 2022, we can get closer to that 97, 98%, because the timing it takes to the last 1% is longer than the first 50%. So that's what we're doing. So expediting or accelerating this investment, bring it a lot closer. I think it's better for us to bring the benefit, deploy earlier, so people benefit earlier rather than later.
Now, it sounds like there's a lot of work to be put in place, and there's a lot of parties involved. I think when we were speaking to MCMC, there's local councils, there's the community, there are challenges in being able to roll out these things as well. Now, when we come back, we'll talk about the movement control order, the pandemic, how it's affected, how it's challenged the organization, what kind of new innovations have been put in place, what kind of future strategies for resilience that we can look forward to. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after these messages.
Yati is a housewife in Kuala Lumpur. Having lived here for a long time, she misses her mother's nasi kuning. Can Yati use the latest smartphone and fast internet access to call her mother, who is in a remote area in Sabah? Introducing Jendela, a government initiative to improve Malaysia's communications infrastructure and broadband coverage. This move will reduce the digital divide and enable cities, suburbs, and rural areas to receive better quality broadband services. Jendela will be rolled out in phases. The 3G network will be gradually terminated as the 4G network is expanded to give Malaysians access to high-speed mobile lines throughout the country. Additionally, all fibre service providers will continue to lend their support by upgrading their network capacity and deploying more base stations to meet the increase in 4G and 5G traffic. This will pave the way for future technology adoptions such as wireless and fixed wireless access, VoLTE, and 5G to achieve the country's digital agenda. Thanks to improved infrastructure through Jendela and by upgrading to a 4G smartphone, Yati is able to speak to her mother without any interruption. This digital transformation will raise the people's economic status and advance the country's socio-economic progress.
Thanks for staying with us on The Nation. You're still with me, Eleno Abdullah, and we're speaking about Celcom's accelerated network investment in this episode of The Nation Jendela. In the studio, I'm speaking to the man himself, of course, Chief Executive Officer of Celcom Axiata Berhad, Idham Nawawi, and we've been having a very robust conversation. Idham, thank you for all your insights that you've shared with us so far, and we've gotten a better understanding with regards to the requirement to sunset 3G, how it's going to affect consumers, and of course for people to realize that it's going to end at the end of December 31st, 2021. They will need to upgrade, otherwise they'll be cut off.
Yes.
And we have understood, especially in the era of pandemic, how connectivity has become a lifeline for people. So let's move on to the next question, because as we know, the reason that Jendela was established by the government is the exponential surge of connectivity. The requirement for data has exponentially boomed. And since MCO was implemented as part of efforts in curbing the pandemic, COVID-19, more people are working from home. More people are also staying at home. Students are staying at home and learning from home, learning remotely. That has become the new way, the new reality. Online classes or pengajaran dan pembelajaran di rumah, PDPR. And although Jendela is supposed to facilitate these requirements, it is still a work in progress. You know, it takes time. It's not an immediate, snap of fingers is going to happen. So within these periods, how are telcos facilitating Malaysians going through these challenging times? What's available now?
Okay. Yes, to roll out the network, to increase the capacity, it takes time. Even though we are already where we are, there are still people who doesn't get what they're looking for. So I think that's what. But what we can do, what we have been doing is trying to help in, maybe I don't know what you call it, financial relief, or helping with to make it easier for them. Many programs that we have done. You take, for example, the free 1 gigabyte that we have given to everyone on the daily basis, so that we know they're using a lot more than they were using before. We're helping the students with for some universities, for them some packages. We're helping with the SPM students with special packages for them, and especially additional free data for them. Celcom, for example, also do free Wi-Fi in some of the PPR locations where a lot of people don't have, maybe not don't have, but cannot afford multiple connectivities in a home. So we give them free Wi-Fi services. We do also tuitions to help them with the exams. I think we do that across the country. Wow. We open up our pusat internet longer than usual. As an industry, we do this, up to 9 p.m. So that people can study with all the access that they want over there. So there are many of these that we do, what we can do today. I think this is both the industry, all of the operators that come together, say, of course, with MCMC, that help to facilitate this, to help to release the burden of the people.
It becomes really apparent, especially during the pandemic, how the gap is so obvious. You know, you have viral stories like the Nurlida Khalida, El Viviona, in terms of, climbing the hills and climbing a tree to get connections. So the rural areas are those that are most underserved at this point of time.
So you are actually absolutely right, and sometimes we don't want to admit it, but a situation like this, bring it forth. There's a big difference between not just about the urban and versus the rural, but versus the have versus the have-nots, right? And then the urban versus rural, we see people like, building up campsite on the hill just to get a signal, which we realized that actually. So for Celcom, what we did was, I told the team, I allocated a certain budget, a few million ringgit. You say, every time you see something like that, we have a rapid response unit. I said, your KPI to my team is, if the news came out this morning, by the evening, I want you to be talking to the person.
And we've seen it happen. I mean, we've seen them getting the support.
We managed to do a few villages and all that, and we went and talked to them, the before and after. And we know normally it will take a lot of time. Sometimes weeks to bring up new infrastructure. So we even go to the extent of putting temporary infrastructure for them.
Right. So
but the thing is, if I may just continue, is we cannot do that everywhere. Because those are very, very expensive. Right? So we can't do that everywhere. But we do whatever we can. We hope that the consumer also will understand. That's not that we don't want to do, but this thing is, we do the best that we can. And if we can do it in the shortest time, we'll do it in the shortest time.
It takes time
to roll out the network.
Now, we have about only 1 minute to closing. So in closing, perhaps what is your vision for the future of telecommunications?
Interesting question.
For Malaysia?
I think this, some telecommunication is the core fundamental infrastructure. If we don't get this right, this is something that it will have a different impact to the society. I think we have come quite far to where we are today. I think we are ahead in some countries, but there are some areas now we need to start, I will use the word buck up a little bit and improve ourselves. Yes, it does need to be relooked at in totality, but what's important for me, and I've been in this industry for almost 25 years, is looking at from the perspective, how do we make this industry a lot more sustainable, become a sustainable industry. We need to come to a point that I use the word win-win-win. It's not just win-win, but win-win-win. we need to come to an environment, a situation where we do something that is a win for the people. Like what we're trying to do is they got the connectivity, good quality connectivity at an affordable price. It's a win for the government. Yes. They get their objectives to raise up the economy for the advancements of the society and so on and so forth. But it also must be a win for the industry.
It must be sustainable in the long run.
It must be sustainable in the long run for the industry, because what people may not know that the industry have to continuously reinvest every year.
Evolve and grow.
Because the demand continue to grow, and the way that they use the network evolve quite significantly.
Thank you so much, Idham, for sharing your thoughts with us. I think we've gotten a better vision about what's ahead for us. Now, we were speaking to Idham Nawawi, Chief Executive Officer of Celcom Axiata Berhad, on the topic of Celcom's accelerated network investment. Now, the increasing adoption of technology and digitization in Malaysia due to the pandemic has highlighted the need to fast-track certain development in the country. Jendela aims to improve the country's current 4G networks and lay a solid foundation before eventually rolling out the 5G network. Now, as telecommunications become an increasingly essential lifeline, it is paramount that no one gets left behind, and the gaps brought to light in past instances show us that there's still much work to be done to bridge that divide. And the Jendela initiative is putting us on the right track. The task at hand for the entire industry is certainly no walk in the park, but with collaborative effort, we will get there together. Thanks for watching to the end of this edition of The Nation Jendela. I'm Jalinan Digital Negara.